This is Mahri, success coach, angel tarot card reader, and reconnective healer, coming to you from the base of Mount Shasta in McCloud, California.
And I'm Dr. Steve Simpson. I'm a mind coach, hypnotist, and fellow of the Royal Society of Medicine, coming to you from the Silver Beach in Portugal.
Today's conversation is about visualizing, and I'm visualizing the best show ever. It's over to you, Dr. Steve.
Well, hold that picture in your head because it's one that I actually share. I've been particularly looking forward to this show because, I've got 7 secrets that we've talked about before. And if I had to choose the favorite, visualization might be up there because it's really, really important. And I can make a promise now to our listeners. You are going to find at least one thing during the next 20 or 30 minutes that you can start to use immediately in your life if you so choose. And during our conversation, I know, Mahri, you've got a lot of great stuff, but I can share some secrets that some of the superstars of the world are using right now. And they're very interesting indeed, and they're very different.
I love that. And one of the things that came to mind when we talked about visualizing, and of course this is all pertaining to our big conversation, which is surrounding luck in our lives. And when I think of visualizing, I just transported back to that moment when I was 20 years old, which was a few years ago, and I wanted to create the creme de la creme job in the United States of America. And there I was in my little place in Scotland thinking, now I've had a little view of what's possible. However, I must think it's possible for me in order for me to attain something just like that. So I wrote down all of the things I would like in the next venture back to America in the way of a job. And I wrote this letter, and when I outlined everything that I wanted a home that had a special place for me to live, car at my disposal. I wanted a tennis court so that I could swim. I wanted to be able to, that I could play tennis, and a swimming pool where I could swim.
You could maybe play tennis in the swimming pool as well. That'd be fun.
I think I did one day. Anyway, the things that I outlined in this letter sounded absolutely out of sight. However, when I called the agent in Glasgow, Scotland, and said, well, I've written this letter and I'd really like to see if we can't aim for a job like that when I go back to America, she said, well, funnily enough, the agent's going to be here today. Long story short, about an hour or so later, I had the job that I outlined. It works. There's the beginning.
It does work, and I'm sure we're going to mention this several times today and in the future as well. I think we're also going to get into a little bit about how the brain works, and as I've promised before, I'm not going to make this rocket science, but basically we interact with our environment through our 5 senses. We only have 5. Well, actually, you and I think that we have at least 6, but that's probably for a later show. So we got let's talk about the 5 ones. It's what we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we smell, and what we taste. And these 5 senses, they drive everything that's going on in our mind and our emotions. And when this is particularly important, when I work with a client, when you work with your clients, because all clients, one of those senses is going to be more important to them than the others. And visualization is very often the most important, but not always. A large part of the brain, by the way, is taken over with cells that are devoted to making pictures one way or the other. But sometimes I'll see a client and I'll say, well, can you visualize, or can you see pictures in your mind? And they'll look at me blankly and they'll say, no, I'm not a visual person. Now, Mahri, what do you think about that?
Well, I've come across the same thing, and my mind goes immediately to that feeling place. So if you don't see, how do you feel? What are you feeling when you're stating what it is you want?
Yeah, exactly so. I mean, I'll just give you one quick example here. I was working with a client. He was a very wealthy man, and unfortunately, like a lot of very wealthy people, he wasn't particularly happy. And so I did the usual thing, what picture does he have? Like you were thinking of your dream job in the States. What was he looking for? And there was nothing there about the job because he had the money. He didn't need the job. What he wanted were things that was going to make him happy. And he described to me this country house, a fantastic couple of cars parked in the drive, a couple of beautiful children, a dog with floppy ears, probably a Labrador or a Retriever or something like that, and a beautiful wife and garden. And he went into great detail with this. And I just looked at him and I said, well, is that the best you can do? And he said, well, yeah, I've just been telling you for 5 minutes. I've painted you a picture. I said, yeah, you have. But the trouble is, my friend, there's one person missing from the picture, and that's you. He hadn't put himself in the picture, and he wondered why he wasn't feeling particularly happy. Now, I know that sounds like naive and trivial, but once he got himself into that picture, you should have seen his face change, and he really felt it then. And well, last time I saw him, he was very happy. I haven't heard any more, so I hope he still is.
And the key word was, once he felt it, he dealt it. It really does matter when we connect the vision with the feeling that comes from it.
Yeah. Okay, Mahri, now I haven't given you any warning about this, but I know you're a good sport, so I'm going to put you on the spot here with a little quiz. Don't look so worried. This is not quantum physics. That comes later. Right. Have you heard of any of these people? Jack Nicklaus.
Yes.
What does he do?
Golfer.
Yeah. Have you heard of Lewis Hamilton? You might not have done.
No.
Okay, well, he's the Formula One world champion racing driver, but I don't think Formula One's quite as big in the States as it is in some other parts of the world. You may not know this one either. Cristiano Ronaldo.
There's a familiarity, but I have no why.
Okay, he's actually from Portugal himself, and he is considered to be the best soccer player in the world, or maybe number 2. There's a guy called Messi who is also pretty good.
And I've heard of him.
Yeah, now you might know this one. Muhammad Ali.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
How beautiful he is.
How beautiful he is. I'm the greatest. He didn't have any confidence issues, did he? And you won't know this one. It's a Swedish lady golfer called Angelica Hammar. I mention her because she's my client. And what all these people share is they reach the top of their tree because they are all great visualizers. Now, there's one other person that if I thought there would be a Nobel Prize for the best visualization skills, this person would get it above the names I've just mentioned. And I'll be really surprised if you've heard of this one. His name is Major James Nesbitt. No. Blank faces. I wouldn't have expected anything else. Now, Major James Nesbitt, he was a fighter pilot in the Vietnam War. And he was shot down in the early days, and he was put into a pit in the ground, an open pit in the ground with bars over the roof. And it was called the Hanoi Hilton. Now, last time I stayed in a Hilton, it's pretty nice. So I think that must have been a joke name. But this hole in the ground, he couldn't even stand up straight. It was about 4.5 feet high, and it was about 5 feet wide. He was there for 7 years in solitary confinement. Now, I said in the last program, any story I tell, it will have a happy ending. Well, this didn't start out very well, did it? Anyway, the war did end, fortunately. Took a long time, and he was released. And people asked him, well, what did you do? How did you keep your mind together? And he said, it was golf that saved me. Okay, tell me more. He said, I imagined every round of golf that I'd played in my whole life. I would give 6 hours a day for this, and I'd go through every detail, who I was with, my score, blah, blah, blah. And he said there reached a time when I'd played all of the golf courses I knew, and I had to invent them. And this kept his head together because apart from flying his plane, golf was the most important thing to him. But the incredible thing was that after he'd come out of the hospital where he'd been debriefed and all the rest of it, he went to a golf course and he played his best round ever. He knocked 20 shots off his previous best, and he hadn't touched a golf club in 7 years. But what he'd been doing was visualizing. And I thought that'd be an example that, you might enjoy listening to. I hope so.
Oh, absolutely. That's brilliant. It made me just feel absolute goosebumps inside. And of course, there was also a little emotion that went with that because I was very much involved with the kids that were coming back from the Vietnam War many years ago. Here in America, I was actually entertaining them. And so I often wondered what it was that brought their soul back to life again, because I didn't get to see them when they left the hospital often, and there were many things that happened during that time. And yes, I believe that it was their vision of being home and being by the fire, holding hands with their wife, holding their child, that kept them in the place of what's possible.
Yeah. And another interesting thing that I was thinking about earlier today, now how about blind people? Do you think they visualize?
I believe they do. I believe they visualize in a totally different way. They have a sense, an inner sense that just creates even more powerful feelings that either you or I might have when they think of what it is they want to see.
Yeah, think of what they want to see. Now, there's a person, they call him the Bat Boy or the Batman. I saw him on TV. He was about 20 years old, so he's not a boy anymore. But this young man, has been blind since birth. And it showed him on the TV program. He was riding his bicycle, through heavy traffic. And what he was doing, he was making sort of clicking noises like a bat would. And because all of those brain cells that were supposed to be devoted to visual pictures, obviously they weren't getting in through his eyes. So what we now know, and have only known this fairly recently, is that brain cells can change their function. This is called neural plasticity. So all of those cells that should be, processing visual images, they were recruited into analyzing these echoes that he was getting back from his clicks. And I tell you, he was getting through that traffic as well as a person with normal vision. And I mean, I'm quite sure the same things happen to people who've lost their hearing and stuff. The brain can make incredible adaptations, and the brain can continue to do so. We used to think, once you're born, once you've done something, your brain's fixed. But fortunately, it's not. And that's why some people can make incredible adaptations to disability and illness. Sometimes, even finding cures for themselves.
I'm transported back to a time in Washington, D.C. when I was performing, and I went on a casual evening into a room where a blind pianist I knew was playing. And as I entered the place, which was very large, and he was at the complete other end with many tables totally filled with people, I had not said a word. I was standing in the entrance, and he said, "Mahri, come up and sing for us." And I almost dropped my teeth if I'd had them loose. It was amazing. I thought, he didn't know I was here. And I always wanted to ask him, how did he know that? How did he know it was me? It certainly wasn't my perfume.
Well, he sensed something, didn't he? And stories like that are truly inspirational. And the thing that always staggers me is that, sometimes when I talk to these people or somebody who've had life-changing injuries, I say to them, if you could put the clock back or if you could have it another way, would you? And very often they say no. They say, no, this thing that happened to me, it was terrible at the time, but I moved through to the other side and it defined me. It made me a different person. It actually made me a better person. Now, I don't suppose any of us really want to try that out. But, I mean, when adversity strikes, if adversity strikes, there are ways that we can find our way through to the other side. There's always a glimmer of hope, at least. And if people can keep that fire going, that glimmer of hope, like the people from Vietnam and all the rest of it, that's what you need that's your survival instinct kicking in.
And there are so many incidents of people going down that hopeless road, the road where they are saying, oh, I can't afford, I won't be able to pay my rent, how am I ever going to pay my bills? And of course, I'm saying this for a reason. I wrote a poem, and it's entitled Visualizing Debts Paid. And it truly was a moment for me in my life when I wrote it, and I realized how often, even though we know we have the tools, we forget about them. We've shoved them under something that might have been so enormous in our lives that we've forgotten that there is another way. And so for those out there who have that moment or have these moments of fear of not being able to pay their bills, I'm going to share this little goodie. And a little wisdom in rhyme. Visualizing debts paid. Trust is the word I keep hearing. And I know in my heart it is true, but when I see all those debts there before me, it's so hard for me not to feel blue. Then I examine the lessons that have followed me all through my life. I recognize this is no different to how I had handled all strife. Now my thoughts are in motion. I'm seeing those choices I made. I'm clear in this new understanding, visualizing that these debts are paid. If visualizing brought me a husband and a car when I needed it bad, I look at all visualizing has done. Now I no longer feel sad. I've taken on an old solution that I've trusted to work well for me. I'll visualize writing all of those checks, and now I'm feeling debt-free.
That's wonderful, Mahri. I mean, I love it when you bring these poems out. In fact, I actually had my eyes closed at certain points because I was just sort of bathing in the sound and the thoughts, and very refreshing it was too. And it was very kind of you to accept my debts. I'm sending them to you. If you could pay them off in the next few days, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
No problem. I'll have it taken care of.
Now, there was one other word that I wanted to introduce to our listeners, and that is myelination. And it's a buzzword among psychologists and sports coaches, as is visualization itself. All the coaches talk about visualization. Unfortunately, many of them, not all by a long way, but some of them at least, their pictures are pretty small. Their pictures do not have the kind of detail that the brain likes to play with. So let's, I always give this analogy to my clients, or when I try and explain it. Just imagine you're a movie director, and you live not too far away from the best movie directors in the world are. Although I'm glad to see that some of the British are being nominated for Oscars and stuff now, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, we can all imagine we're a movie director, and the movie directors, they play with the senses, that I explained earlier, the 5 senses. But what they do is they increase the arc of those senses. They really big it up. So when you're talking about the visual scene, the visual scenes for a start, they have a big panoramic screen in their mind. They generally don't make black and white movies anymore. They're in beautiful color and crystal clear photography, and the lighting is always perfect. So, I mean, that's just how they play with people's eyes. And then, of course, they play with the ears, the auditory components, with the music. The music is chosen very carefully. The actors' voices are chosen very carefully, all of the special effects and stuff. So if we're going to build pictures in our mind, and we're really creating a screenplay, because it's not just pictures, it's the sound that goes with it, it's the emotion that those things, the kinesthetic, how you feel in your body about it. And you can't smell or taste it, but sometimes it's so real when you get into that film that you feel that you can. So when you're going through a visualization exercise with a client or our listeners now, I'm maybe going to lie on their bed when we've finished with a damp cloth over their head and make a fantastic movie in their head of what they want to achieve, as you did in your poem. Just, that's something to bear in mind. You are the movie director, you are Steven Spielberg, your budget is unlimited. You can have the best people in the world, the best crew, all the rest of it for your own movie. And don't just watch it once. Make it short as well, not like The Revenant, 2.5 hours, I hear. I hope they have a potty break halfway through, but I'm told it's a great movie. Anyway, but make the movie short so that you can play it again and again and again and again. And because the brain likes things that are fast, speed it up. Even play it backwards. The brain likes doing things like that. It plays with it. It joins the dots together. And what you are doing is you are building a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your brain is beginning to believe that it's achieved whatever direction you gave it to me, like the debts you gave it to. Like the debts disappearing, or being the best racing car driver in the world, or the best golfer, or the best boxer. That's why successful people have very big movies running around in their head. And what this word myelination is that I mentioned earlier, myelin is a layer that surrounds the nerve cells. And the more you practice something, myelin is laid down around these nerve cells. So it's like a copper cable that transmits electricity. If you want to really push a lot of electricity through, you need a really thick cable. So by continuing to repeat stuff, that's how things myelinate. And then they move from being conscious to the unconscious mind. It's, for example, remember when we learnt to ride a bicycle? We fell off a lot of times, but we kept on going and going and going. And now, even as an adult, if you haven't been on a bike for 40 years, you'll hop on, and chances are you won't fall off. And this is what successful people do. And what do you think about that, Mahri? Are you going to make some big movies tonight?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that came up for me when you were talking about this, and I connected very quickly to it, was the sound process, the sound of music. Because one of the things I've been shown in my practice is that when I have a client who starts to define their life purpose, what it is that brings them the most joy, what it is that's turning every atom of their being on, I introduce sound to this whole process. And so I will have them define one sentence, a short sentence, with key words and referring to their life purpose. And when I have them choose the key words, I have them then say one at a time. My purpose is making a difference in the world through my words and my music. There's a sentence. So they'll choose the key words. I'm making a difference. Difference is the first key word. So I say to them, where does that word resonate in your being? When you say it, close your eyes and just say, difference, difference. And within the chakra realms of their being, they will know exactly where that lands. and I will play the note that corresponds with that place in their chakras. And so by the end of the sentence, the 3 or 4 words that they have chosen, they have a sound to go with it now. So it may be dum, 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 whatever it is. But the minute they hear those words, they get back into that frame of mind that brings the solid feeling of, I'm home.
Yeah, I'm home, because just as you were giving me those notes, I was thinking, I've heard that before. And I think it was like the theme music for E.T., wasn't it? So E.T.'s come home. Yeah, it's absolutely a great idea. I mean, is it a coincidence that there are 7 colors in the visible spectrum? And I believe there are 7 chakras as well. And I'm not much of a musician, but I think there are 7 notes in a scale also, are there not?
Yeah.
So it's all part of the electromagnetic spectrum. It's all part of energy. And the way you built that, combining words with music, can only amplify the effect. And I think that's a great thing to do. In fact, I'm going to do that with some of my clients and tell them I've just invented this new system.
Thank you. You know, that's the highest form of flattery. And I will add that I do involve color with it too. So yes, that's where the visualization side of that comes in, where they can see and feel that color. Yes, it's all important and very, I wish I could say the title of the senses that you just spelled out for us. But that's the connection. It's brilliant.
Yeah. No, that's really powerful. And again, I did promise our listeners some, simple exercises that they could do. And I think we've given you several already, Mahri and both of us. So you've got plenty to work on. But I know that you're capable of even better. One of my expressions is the enemy of the best is the good. People who are satisfied with good don't realize how much higher they can fly. So here's another one. Often people, once you've worked on their visualization skills, they've identified their goal, their big dream, what they want to achieve, which is great because that is obviously, you have to know where you want to go, otherwise you're going to get yourself rapidly lost. So you've got your goal, and then they say, but I don't know where I'm going to start. I mean, I know what I want, but what do I do first? Who do I need to talk to? What do I have to do? Do I need any training? Blah, blah, blah. And they start drilling down into the detail, and before they know it, this little sabotage voice in their head has sowed so much doubt that in many cases, they'll finally go through this internal dialogue and say, nah, not going to do it. Waste of time. I know I won't get there. So if I sense any of that self-sabotage going on, I will say, okay, let's not worry about that right now. Close your eyes, because funnily enough, we visualize better when our eyes are closed. I'll say to them, close your eyes. Now, I want you to project yourself forward, let's say 6 months from now, and you've achieved your goal. And in your mind's eye, you can see all the people that are around you. You can hear all the celebrations going on. And this feeling of emotion that you said, that's going to be in some part of your body. It's going to be bursting wherever you're feeling it. And then while you've got all those wonderful endorphins going through your system, into this story, I weave another character. And I say, and you're just enjoying the feeling of getting there when a lady, it could be a man, doesn't really matter, a person taps you on the shoulder and they say, I just wanted to add my congratulations for your fantastic achievement today. I work for the local newspaper, and I know that my readers are going to be very interested to know how you got there. If you have a minute, and if you don't mind, would you just kind of look back over the last 6 months and just give me a few hints as to all of those little steps that you did that made you the person you are now? And then, of course, the person starts thinking, they say, yeah, because, of course, what I'm doing is I'm connecting with their unconscious mind, which is way more creative than the conscious mind. And they start giving these little things. And then after a few minutes, I ask them to open their eyes. And I've been taking a few little notes or memorizing what they've said. So I say, okay, a few minutes ago, you didn't know what you were going to do, what your first step was going to be. Do you know now? And they say, oh, yeah, I know exactly what my first step's going to be, and my second, my third. And, that you've got the stone to start to move. And once it builds some momentum, again, it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, Mahri, there you go. I'd like to hear another poem about that. I'm sure you'll be working on it.
Definitely. And, we have the great privilege of connecting. We're having a conversation 6,000 miles apart. We've never met, and yet we both have a very similar come from as to what's important and how important it is to share our gifts with our audience, because we've both had our personal experiences with whatever we're dealing with, and we have facts that back them up in the way of working with others. And one of the things I'm recognizing within my group of clients and listeners is that they often don't think things are possible. In other words, they're thinking, I've never been to London. Oh, I can't imagine how I'd ever get there. And to that, I immediately say, visualize it. Tell me, where would you want to go in London when you be there? I mean, if you have some desire to be there, at least start thinking about what it is you want to go there for. And that opens a slight door and begins the excitement. And when you feel the excitement, then we all need to add on to that. That's all that needs to happen. And, when I came to America, I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have the wherewithal to dash back and forth across the Atlantic. But I will say that for the first 60 years of being here, or 50 years, I should say, of being here, I've managed to go whenever I wanted, no matter what. And I would project whatever travel I wanted, and it would happen. No matter what was in the bank account, it paid itself. And it was just a matter of allowing it. So you and I can make a difference for all the people who are thinking what's not possible and turning it around to the place of possibility. So I was saying that I would like to know what's next in the avenue of luck with Dr. Steve.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked me that. And I told you that visualization was my favorite. The trouble is, whatever topic we talk about, I'm always going to say this is my favorite. So my favorite one is the secret number 4, and it's a word that a lot of people are using now. It's getting a lot of traction, rightfully so. And the word is mindfulness.
Mindfulness. It opens so many thoughts. Well, yeah. I think we'll just leave it there. And thank you, listeners. And remember, you can get in touch with us at angelcornerretreatradio.com and speak to either Dr. Steve or myself. You may have a question that you would like us to answer, and we're here for you. Isn't that right, Dr. Steve?
It definitely is. And so thank you, Mahri, for co-presenting again today. I love working with you. And Harry, of course, our producer, who's working 24/7, it seems. But thank you to our listeners, because there's no radio show without listeners. And as Mahri said, we do want to hear from you. We're in studios on our own, but we do this because we want to connect with people with real stuff. So please write in. And who knows, we might get you on the show as well. That'll be fun.
Angel Corner Retreat Radio is produced by Happy Radio Network in our studios in McCloud, California. Thank you for listening.